Hey guys, it's Tom here. And in this tutorial, I will show you how to get from the right animation, so this here, to an animation with custom highlights. I will walk you through everything step by step, and we will start with the installation. So inside the script folder here, you get my tfrog relight script for After Effects. You will just need to go into this direction here, so going into Windows C in your C drive to Program Files, inside here to Adobe, your Adobe After Effects version, in this case 26. To support files, to scripts, and drag and drop it into the script UI panel here. After you drag and drop it inside there, you need to restart After Effects and you are good to go. To get the window over here, you need to go to Window, and down here, there's the tfrog relight script. I can even deselect it once and select it once so you can see it. If it's undocked like so, you can easily click on the name here and drag it inside here. Alright, so now that we got the installation for the script, we also need the stuff for Houdini. So for this, we're going to the HDAs, we're selecting boost of the HDAs, and inside here, we're going to Documents, to our Houdini version, in this case 21, to OTLs, and inside here you can drag and drop it in. Alright, now the installation should be done, and we can start. So in After Effects, we will go to our clip here, so this animation, and from here we will start with the skin. So we type in skin in here, and select the layer, and we're hitting Build Range Pair, like so. We're getting two no layers. The first one is the color layer. You see everything is red. This is to visualize it a little bit better. And to get the result, we need to get to the skin matte here. Inside here, we got the color key. So let's move to the skin over here. And I don't want to delete this part here. So let's select it like this. And we maybe can increase it a little bit more. I will duplicate the layer and also select this here. Maybe decrease this here a little bit further. We can increase this and decrease this further. Now let's watch the result here. Looking okay. We can watch it now with the skin tone over here. And you see also the shorts are getting affected and we don't really want that. So for this we can just draw a mask over the head. Maybe we want to even make it smaller, like so. So the arms also don't get affected. And this is looking good. Alright, we are done with the head. Now let's move on to the jacket. So I type inside here jacket, like so. I hit again build range pair, like so. And we do the same for the jacket. Now let's also select the color here, like so. And the jacket is cleaned up. Nice. Now let's move on and we want to do the shorts here. So let's type shorts. And again, we're selecting the color here. In this case, we also need to increase it again a little bit more. Maybe we want to decrease the softness here also. And be using another one for this area over here. And I think this is looking good. Let's select the color here. Maybe let's visualize another frame. I think there's a little bit missing. So we use again one more, like so. This is a little bit too much, but this is looking pretty good. Now we see the shirt also getting changed. We don't want this. So again, we draw a mask. And because we need to animate it a little bit, because it's too close together to draw it just with a single mask, we do it like this. Going to frame 1, using the mask path. And let's start with here. We're moving forward in frames until it's changed. So now let's move it to here and move it to here. A good thing in this animation, it's a looped animation. I don't have to keyframe everything here. I just need to go to the first frame. And I see this is the pose of the legs. So I can search up for the same pose, like this. I delete the next two things here. And now I can just copy this and paste it in here and again in here. Now let's select all the keyframes. And I want to make them hold. So toggle hold keyframes. And now the shirt is free. Great. Now we already deleted all the highlights. We can move on and create a normal map. For this, I'm using a plugin. It's called Normal Scanner, like here. And to use it, I'm using an adjustment layer and type Normal Scanner. And I want to increase the resolution to 1024. And I go to Restart. I maybe also want to lower the timeout. So maybe just 40. And the window size maybe to 25. This result looks really good. We also got some details inside the shirt or inside the shorts here. And you can render it out as a PNG image sequence now. Also, make sure you also have an opacity map. An opacity map is basically just your character as a white and black map. And we also need it as a PNG sequence for Houdini. Alright, let's dive into Houdini. And we will start with a geo container here. This will be my character. And we also need a camera. I will increase the height to 1. Let's dive in here. And I'm using my own custom node, enemy import. Inside here we can select a camera. I will select the camera I created, camera 1. I can also give it a name. I call it character. And I also want to hit the export button here. Now I don't see anything here yet because I didn't give it a depth. So let's use a depth of 2. And now we got the plane together with our UV that we can use now in lobs. Now let's move to lobs. You can press N and in the top right is lobs. Let's move inside there. Inside here, I already have a setup for this. The setup looks like this and provides everything for me already. So I got my enemy character here. I can load it in like so. Inside here, I can also load in my character and also opacity and a normal map. And also an opacity and a normal map. So let's do it real quick. One opacity map like so. And one normal map like so. I'm using a frame rate from 1 to 60. And now you can already see our character running here. Looking good. We also got our camera inside here. And if I watch through the camera, hitting Karma XPU and also increase my exposure to 5, you can see our light map here. I can also move it a little bit more. So maybe -80 and a value of 6. And you see it also works on the animation. Looking really cool. We could also add, for example, some point lights. So let's add one point light over here. I want to decrease the size here. Let's turn off the render for now. And I will select my point light over here. I move it back to maybe a value of this. Move it to the right here and a little bit higher. And we want to duplicate the light and move one in the top left, for example, like here. Let's start with this light. But at first, let's watch through the camera. And I want this light in a bluish color. Maybe something like this. And a value of 3 or 4 should be fine. Maybe a little bit closer. Looking good. And for this, we can also just use a color temperature. Let's use a warmer color temperature here. And also maybe a 3. Something like this. Looks cool. All right. Now you can see it also works in the animation. And we can render it out now as our light map. But how do we build this? I will also show it real quick. So as you can see here, this is just a SOP import. Inside here, you can drag and drop your character. Then we need our material library, like so. Inside the material library, we got the node I provide, the anime character builder, like so. And here you got the input for the opacity and normal map already. Let's move up. And we're hitting the gear icon on the material library, like so. Let's add a new folder under the tab menu and change it to simple, hitting apply. Then we're diving in and we're using the opacity and the normal map on the new folder. We also want to call it maps, hitting apply again. And now you can see we got the opacity and normal map inside here. One thing that's also really important is to allow shader parameter animation. So if you have a PNG sequence, it only works if we have this setting here enabled. All right, let's move on to the camera. We're using a cam scene import here. And we want to force object the camera 1, like so. We're hitting merge over here. You can also apply some lights you always want to use. In this case, I would just want to use my distance light over here. Let's apply to this. And at the end, we only need our karma setup here, like so. Let's apply this to here. And we also need to make some changes inside here. At first, select the camera. And then we need to use Full HD. Let's also use XPU for rendering. And maybe 50 samples. Inside the image output, under filter, we want to use a denoiser, the inter-Audion one. For the AOVs, we don't want to make any changes. But in the rendering, under the limits, we want to increase the diffuse limit to value of 2, the reflection limit to 3, and the same goes for the refraction. All right. Now you can also give it a custom name and the output. And for the USD render up, we also want to change it to render specific frame range. All right. Now if you have everything done, you can select everything. You can go right click on the merge and go to recipes. Inside the recipes, you can go to save selected items as a tool. And here you can give it a name. You can also search up for a custom icon you want to use. And at the end, you just have to hit save. And if you have everything done correctly, you can easily type the name you gave it. And then you can easily import your scene here. Now, after you rendered out your light map, we can switch back to After Effects. Inside here, let me select this layer and I will pre-compose this. And now let's import our light map. For the light map, I also provided some effects here, some presets basically. It wants to apply highlights and the colors. Let's start with the highlights. You can see it's really dark now, but we can increase the exposure and you can easily see the highlights now coming in front. We also need the highlights completely on the character. So for this, we're duplicating the character. We give it an exposure. We're going to the track matte and selecting our light map. We're selecting the Luma matte So it's looking like this. So our color is on the light values of the layer of the light map. Now we can increase the exposure of this layer, and you can see our highlights are appearing. Because I used some different versions, it's mismatching now, but one thing you can also do if it's an animation, you can hold every second or every third frame, depends on the animation. In this case, I use every second frame, like so. And now you can see it automatically matches again, looking pretty good. And now we also want to add the color. So again, I'm plugging in my light map over here. Let's use hold every second frame and we apply color. Now it's looking like this. I want to increase my color over here. And I can also use my light map like so. So I can only see my color like this. And if I'm happy with this, I can change it to my color like so. And decrease the opacity a little bit more to play around with this. And now you see we got our custom animation getting from this to this. I also got some little tips and tricks. If you have, for example, a character with a gradient, so the hair is not one steady value, but a value from white to a more grayish color, you can also apply some effects. So for this, I use now a gradient as an example. Gradient ramp, like so. Let's move it over here and this over here. I will also pre-compose it because this is my character now. And for this, I got my apply color keys here. So before this, I need to add, for example, call this gradient and build pair range like so. I can now add one color, for example, this here. And you can see this is the color that's will getting affected. I can increase it or decrease it. But if I want to change my values from here to here, it's really hard to do because I don't want to add each layer here one by one and key it out. So for this, I added this color range key here. You select it once, and then you can select the darkest color, for example, this here, hitting apply. And same goes for the lightest color I want to choose, maybe this here. And I maybe want 15 steps, like so. And let's apply color keys. Let's also move the match choker completely to the bottom. And I can select now all color keys and increase the color tolerance a little bit more. And you automatically see now we got all this selected. And if I use my color here, for example, I want this here, or I really want to blend it in, so I'm using this here, you see it's now blending perfectly from the black to this here. All right. One thing that's also really important is that you are working in a 32-bit channel, because sometimes you will have some issues if you do it not. For example, if I switch back to a, for example, 16-bit, you can see the colors are changing here. And we don't really want this. And this is why I'm working mostly in 32 bits in this case. And one other little thing we also need to do sometimes, if you have a shot where the character is more in focus, for example, a close-up shot, you will see better these lines here, and you really don't want to see them. But for this, there's also a really cool trick. Let's also hold every second frame here. And then we grab our pen tool here and double click on it. And now we can grab the color from here and go over here and here, maybe also over here and here. Just like this to feather up the edges here. You can also use the stem tool if you want to use it like this. But just make sure if you just have a second frame animation, so every second frame is changing, change the duration to custom and then to a value of 2 in here. Alright. One thing you also can add if you want to, that sometimes make really sense, is inside here some noise or grain on the shorts, for example. So let's use some noise over here and increase it, because you also see here is also some noise on it. And we also need it on here, but it's maybe just a value of 0.8, something like this. And yeah, this is looking way better. Same goes for the jacket. I can just copy it over, also to the jacket and to the skin. The cool thing you can do now is if you go to your light map here, you can increase the highlights like this, or even decrease them like so. You can also use an hue and saturation here and shift the colors to change the highlights up in a different color. Yeah, but I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any more questions, like I always say, you can always hit me up on Discord. And yeah, with all that said, stay creative, guys, and see ya.